the Good Afternoon Planet Earth podcast with Dominic Leonelli and Amy Johns.
Yo, good afternoon.
Now for the show.
Planet Earth. Introducing my awesome co-host, Dominic Leonelli.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope you guys are all doing great. And give it up for my even more awesomeness co-host, Amy J. Jans, a.k.a. I don't have a niche.
Froze up a little bit. Yes,
Okay,
thank you. And Dom's details on Instagram. So what have you been up to, Dom?
Actually just getting scared to death, spitting blood out of my mouth.
Oh my God. So what happened? You were just showering and then blood came out?
Yeah, I just spit. I felt like, I got a lot of spit in my mouth, and I spit, and it was a lot of dark red blood.
Oh my God. Did you bite your tongue?
I don't know. I got this toothbrush that's like mechanical or whatever. You press a button, and I think it might have cut me somewhere and I don't see it or something this morning when I brushed my teeth. I don't know.
Oh no. Oh my gosh. That sounds scary. Could it be, are you flossing?
I haven't been, so I haven't in a few weeks.
Maybe it's your gums. I tell you, if I don't floss for 2 days, my gums start bleeding.
Oh wow, yeah, that's probably it could be. Maybe I need to floss more. I was on the flossing for a while and I slowed down, so maybe that is what it is.
Yeah.
Let's hope. Either way,
it really makes a difference, flossing.
When it happened, I didn't realize what happened. I thought I was about to die. I was shaking. I was terrified.
Yeah. No, that's scary. I mean, blood anywhere, is terrifying.
Right. What about you? What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? I've been just trying to get organized with content. So, but all right. So we have a guest for our coffee chat segment. And Dom, you want to tell a little backstory of?
Yeah, we were I was actually in the park doing stand-up with a group of people. Like, we go to Washington Square Park with a PA system now since COVID, and we do stand-up outside. So we were doing it outside and just talking to people, and I got the opportunity to talk to this really awesome student from Pace University about like copywriting and just like theater in general. Because when I first moved to New York,
now copywriting or copyright law?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it's tips on some tips on some things to look out for. I mean, basically what I could gather is like, I always wanted to when I first moved to New York, I would love to have got to go to film school or even just sit in a couple classes, like I remember I went to like New York Film Academy, maybe I don't know, on like 23rd Street, and it was like 16,000 a semester. Like
so expensive
even
there.
the books were crazy priced. And I don't know, I just was like, I always wish I would have got like an inside look at that. So I feel like it's cool. We kind of got an opportunity. I spoke to her for a little bit. She's been studying film and screen for about 4 years there.
Cool.
And just all around cool person. I like to show some people some inside looks, like in what you would see in a New York film school if you were going to plan that route to move to New York and study film. I know a lot of our followers feel like are somewhat interested in the entertainment field in a way, but we're very lucky to have her on. I'm gonna bring her out. Is she backstage? Do we got her ready? All right,
you ready
cool.
to go, Alanis? All right, cool. Everybody.
Cool. Good afternoon. Give our guest a nice welcome, everybody, for Alanis Choo.
Woo!
Thank you.
Hi, you. Hey. I'm Amy. Nice to virtually meet you.
It is so nice to meet you guys. Thank you for inviting me on. I hope I'm like in frame. It's a little new, this platform.
Yeah, you might have to turn it a little bit. It looks like you're there. We almost other way.
This way? Is it working?
It's
like a trick. Okay.
That's perfect.
You're good.
Okay.
Cool.
Sweet. Thanks for coming on. It's been a while since the park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was fun. That was cool. I've never really connected with something like that.
Yeah, I was just telling our audience how we did the stand up in the park, and we just got to start chatting. I remember one of the first things you were telling me that got me on was like some website or something to join.
Mhm.
That's a good. What was that thing that you were talking about?
So it's the Writers Guild of America, and the website, it's www.wgae, that's .org. That's the East Coast organization. And what you can do right on there for $20 if you're a non-member is you just literally click register your script, and that takes care of copywriting, record of authorship, and basically it protects you and your expression of ideas, like what they would call it in a court of law, from any plagiarism, any infringement, and you're now incorporated with this group too.
Awesome.
I think also just by if you email it to yourself, it does an automatic copyright, I heard.
You have to mail it to yourself actually, like with postage, and then you get that it's like posted federally and dated, and that's like a receipt of return basically.
Right.
So maybe now, since everything is online, you can email it to yourself, but I do know that through mail it's like 100%.
I have heard that's the old school ghetto copywriting.
Yes.
Comics.
Yes. By the way, any listeners, none of us are lawyers, so this is all just, things that we've heard and we're passing it along.
Just tips. I've been hearing a lot about the Writers Guild. That's what interested me. Like, I'm not even really for sure what all that is, but I've been to like the building once to sign up for something in New York. They had an office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. So you're a film student at Pace University. I actually got accepted at Pace. I was going to go there, but anyway, I ended up going to FIT. So I minored in film and media. So but that's great. Knowing film is so helpful in terms of being like a content creator, because it's like it kicks up your content up a notch, Do you have a focus, like screenwriting or editing?
Yes. So my focus, I'm not super technical with the cameras and stuff, but I'm a writer, and I do have a book recommendation if I can show it for anyone out there, because I think it is so helpful, like you said, to content creators too, even if you're not like totally organizing a whole screenplay, but it's this. I hope you guys.
Oh yeah,
sweet,
right?
Classic.
And it's like it is like super well known for beginners, but then also really big in the industry. It is called The Foundation. So it gives a really, really good, I guess, a structure, you could say, of the paradigm that is screenwriting, because I think a lot of people struggle with, and I know I did as a beginner film student, kind of like surrendering yourself to the form that is screenplay writing, because you don't just kind of like get to throw down the idea that you think is, this $1 million thing. You really do have like a very in place structure that everyone has to adhere to.
Yeah. And then with anything creative, rules are meant to be broken, but it helps if you follow the format. Because I can't tell you how many times I start creative projects and I'm stubborn. I know the rules, but I'm stubborn. I'm like, forget it. I go in this like stream of consciousness place. And then you get to a point where it's like, oh, wow, I should have had an outline, because then I waste so much time editing something. Like I wrote a whole novel and oh my God, I did it, the whole thing stream of consciousness. And now I'm like, it's more work of editing this stream of conscious novel than it was to write it. Because I'm like, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. I'm like, why? I wish I took the time and, comb through every word in the moment, because now it's a disaster. And I wasted so many hours of this 85,000 word novel.
Alanis, can I ask you, what's your process when you're starting to write something? Do you have like a blueprint you go by, like where you're like, okay, I'm going to write this. Here's A, B, and C of my steps of how to do it?
I guess maybe it's not a blueprint, but there's definitely a process. And what I will say, to, what Amy just said, it's not really a waste of time, because I kind of start all my projects like that too. And it's really good to sort of just, like, one of the things that I've learned recently is to just sort of like word vomit onto the page, so that you get everything out, and then you can pick through and see, all right, what's going to work in the novel structure and the screenwriting structure. So that is something I actually do to begin with. I just sort of throw all my ideas down. And then after that, I think it's really, really helpful to do like character bios. So even though you're not showing all this stuff on screen, you need to know who your characters are and who you're writing about, because it provides all the context for what they're going to do, right? And you as the writer, you have to know that. So like, for example, I have a character, his name was it's like Preston St. James. And like, there's a clue already. He's like a pretentious asshole. And what I did in his,
I visualized him just by his name.
Right?
Right.
But in the bio, there's, this whole thing where his mother passed away when he was about 12. And during this time, his father was having an affair and, was very absent. And even though he's clearly pretentious, as the character plays out in the screenplay, you begin to see bits and pieces of this history, but only I know the full extent of it. And it eventually it becomes very, very helpful. And then after that, one of the biggest things I think that like almost all writers can do is get index cards. And the magic number is 14. And what you want to do is write like one sentence, because those 14 index cards represent like the 14 big scenes or moments. So like on the first one, it could be Danny buys a car. Number 2, it could be Danny's car gets stolen. And then number 3, Danny decides to get his car back. And then you go on and go on. And when you have that, you can fit, you don't have to go in chronological order as you're writing. But what you can do, why it's better to have the index cards, is you can physically move them around and rearrange the order to see what works better for you, for the characters. And that's
that. You can plant the Easter eggs.
Yeah.
And a big thing is also with writing, you want to get the best version of the story, but you also want to get what works. So there is a lot of sacrifice. So you really want to think, yes, this is a good idea, and this is such a juicy scene. I put my best writing, my best command of language here, but is it going to work in the big scheme of things?
Like as in moving the story forward.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I know as writers, we fall in love with certain things, and we fall in love with a certain detail. And it's like, okay, this isn't propelling the thing forward.
Exactly.
The character. Sorry. What were you going to say, Amy?
I was going to say, I loved what you said about the character with Preston. That was a great example because it builds empathy. So it's like even the villains should have an empathy in them. That's what makes a dynamic villain, I think.
Exactly.
Or antagonist.
Yeah, and I really like the bios of the character. I recently actually learned that last year as I was writing my second short film. Hopefully I'll be recording that soon, and we can play it on here. But yeah, in the character, I was working with a guy that writes stories like novels, and he was stressed the character development and the bios, which I never thought of. And then it actually really helped move the story along when I had a solid character. Like, this guy doesn't believe in himself. This is about him. And then later on when I'm writing, I'm like, oh yeah, because Tony doesn't believe in himself. And then now he does. It helped majorly from me being on page 12, like, okay, now what's Tony doing on the couch or something?
Exactly.
So that was great. That was a great tip.
Now, I'm a person who loves process, and any artist, what I find fascinating, every artist, painters, musicians, comedians, screenwriters, we all have a similar creative process or just something that helps us make a routine. What's your process? When you sit down to write, do you do like a strict butt to chair kind of thing, or you work off inspiration? Or a word count, like, okay, 5,000 words.
Yeah, some people walk around. I know people that have to go somewhere for a walk.
Sometimes I do that. Yeah, if I'm alone, oh my God, like I love walking around with a voice recorder and doing voice to text. But if I'm not home, I will get made fun of hardcore. Like, what are...
What's yours on?
Well, I will say dictating is really, really important, walking around with that voice recorder, because inspiration strikes at any moment. But for me, I think I don't know, walking around, when I go on my walks, I feel like I'm a little bit in my head sometimes. So it's not as productive as I would hope, but it is a little bit like I said earlier, the word vomit. I'll just kind of sit in front of my computer. Or I really like my character bios. I write those by hand because I think it comes out a little more organically. But when I sit in front of the computer, sometimes what I'll do is I'll start with like a poem. Like I'll decide, okay, I'm going to write a little poem version of this idea I have. And it really like, if I'm feeling like it's unraveling on its own, I'm like, okay, it's already unraveling and the poem's getting a little long. Let me take it a step further. But beyond that, that's like very, very creatively inclined. Sometimes it's just easy to go, all right, I have an idea. And if I don't have an idea, I have a character or I have an inciting incident that I want to put into something. And I'll say, all right, I'll give myself a page, maybe two. And I'll just like it's not an essay, but it's like you're writing a little essay about it. And that can then be turned into an outline or a script. Typically you want to go to outline first, but that's really the process. And it's really, I think the key is to not let it get too drawn out. So keep it to a page, 2 pages. Yeah. So then you won't get carried away.
Yeah, like how, see, for me, the hardest part is just getting started. And when you do it like with no pressure, like, hey, I'm just doing a fun poem or just a page. Because me, I'll start writing what I did yesterday. I'll be like, I went down the street, but it kind of takes me away from writing jokes, but it just gets my hand moving. But I like the poems, like a fun way to be like, this is it.
Yeah.
That's really great. I'm more of an inspiration type of person. Like I can never just sit down and start writing. But when it hits me, I have to do it right then. And if I don't, it's gone. Like, and it'll be the strangest things. I'll be like, I was in a yoga class with a few friends, and I had to get up and leave and get this joke right. Like
That's great.
Yoga.
I know. I've actually, same thing, yoga or Pilates class, but I've been like repeating the line over and over and it was bothering me. And I should have just done that, just walked out.
When inspiration strikes, grab it because, if you don't, it's like, time is money, don't let that moment of like brilliance pass. And that's why I almost always like, I keep that, you've got the notes app on your phone, just jot it down. There are times, I think like traveling is some of the best times I've had where like just inspiration is like coming down on me. I was on an airplane from New York to Vegas and I filled up, like, it was like you could scroll through the notes app with all the stuff I had in it.
Wow. Yeah, that is great.
I know. My thing is when inspiration hits, I'll quick write it down and then I go back to it. And I'm so disorganized that I get overwhelmed. So lesson learned. I know, like, I just been like, my thing, I've been writing like goofy songs on my guitar prior to writing because it kind of opens up my brain. But I just get like a verse of an inspiration or a chorus of an inspiration. And last night I went back to flush it out. I'm like, I'm going to write a parody song. And then I went back and it wasn't there. It's like that. I don't know. Yeah. So I think stick with it. I don't know. Inspiration. It's I wish there was an inspiration pill, like not a drug, but like a herb, maybe like.
Right. 100%. I know.
I think there is.
Right. Yes. Well, the green, when I lived in LA, I had my weed card and I always thought, I was like, I'm going to do the sativa for the brain. And oh my God, I would just put on jazz music and end up dancing and like writing lyrics to the jazz song. I'm like, oh my God. It's a very focused thing. The brain is kind of like a child. You got to discipline sometimes. Like, okay, let's go back. Let's focus right back.
Yeah, I definitely get like that. Alanis, do you have anything that you want to promote or anything that you've worked on or that's coming up in your future that you'd like to talk about?
Right now, everything I'm doing is pretty close to the university community. I think I'm talking on a panel
Cool.
next week. But one thing I will say that I want to promote is, again, this book for just like
Oh,
anyone
awesome.
who wants to. I think like even if you're not writing screenplays, it gives such a like insightful perspective on writing as a whole. You know, he gets into writer's block and how it is maybe one of the best tools you can have as a writer is hitting that wall because you're like, okay, have I exhausted myself? No. I finally hit that pivotal moment where I can go deeper, you know?
Wow. It's Sid Field. Which one is it? Because I have a
Sid Field.
screenplay.
This is
The
the
Foundations.
foundations. Yeah.
I see you have thousands of notes in there. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Can you
It's
turn to
just,
one of those notes? Like, what
Yes.
is
oh
that
my God.
going
It's
on? Look at
like,
the book of films. Let's see. Hold on.
oh,
We can't
wait, you
see
can't
it.
even see. You can't even see.
Just put it in front of us.
There's
There it
like
is.
Oh,
so much. Like, oh look,
wow.
this is like
That's
super useful.
amazing.
But
That's
this is like all throughout
insane.
the
I
book.
love that. I'm
But
sure
I-
you've read the classic Save That Cat.
Right.
I love that book.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah. Oh, and just I think what's useful too is when you watch movies, there are certain like points that you can look for, like the 45-minute mark, for to know if it's a good, not just a good movie, but if it's a workable movie. Like there are things called plot points, right? And at that 45-minute mark, it's called the inner focus point. And if the writer did a good job and you're looking, you know, hard enough, you're going to see that that main character has a moment where you see this inner goal. You know, they want to be a better person, they want to, you know, be a more present father, something like that. So you know, I don't want to, I don't have any like personal promotions, but just for other people out there, I think it's really a helpful sort of exercise. You know, just look at the movies and look for these things because it'll make you a better writer and a better worker within the structure.
Yes.
That is so cool. Thanks for
That
sharing that.
is. Thank you. One more thing. Yeah, I started a screenplay and then I have so many projects. I wish I could just like be a full-time artist. It's happening, guys. It's happening for all of us. But my first act is 30 pages, but I read it has to be 25 pages, right? Or is that the...
Well, here's the thing. Everything is approximate, you know, not every screenplay is, you know, 120 pages. So you want to approximate it between like 20, 25, because by that 22nd page, you want to have that plot point that's going to spin in the whole story into that new direction that leads you into the second act, right? Exactly. So as long as, you know, between that 20 and 25, you've got that plot point, make it as long as you feel you need to set up the context.
Cool. And then another thing, B stories. So like I want to write with one person, but I feel obligated to have a B story. I get kind of confused with B stories. Do you have any tips for B stories, and are they necessary?
They're totally not necessary, but if you think it'll be conducive to moving the story along, and if it's going to help, because typically on every page of a screenplay you want like a new bit of information. If it's going to help you with that and, you know, really give you some incentive to making sure that that's happening, absolutely. But don't feel obligated. Don't feel obligated to anything really while writing, besides the form a little bit, just so you're not, because one thing is if you don't stick to the form, when you shop it, any reader, they're going to look at those first few pages, and if they see that the form is off, they're not going to go further.
Right.
Wow. Okay, good to know. That's interesting. Yeah, that was very helpful. Yeah, I was always confused with B plots too. You know, sometimes it's like you feel like you're writing a whole second story. Now you got two stories going on. That is very interesting.
And then
Well,
it's like I developed the protagonist so well that like doing the point of view from this guy without, it's a whole mind trip, but it's interesting. I don't know. I got to work on that.
my hardest thing is finishing. Like it took me forever to just finish. I had like two
Little
forever.
baby steps, baby
Right.
steps. Even 1 page a day. If you did 1 page a day, you'd be done in 125 days.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
Yeah,
you start to
exactly.
look at that page 60, like I'm throwing it away.
Well, here's something. Page 60 falls right between these two inner focus points. So you know that on page 60, whoever that character is should be working towards like another radical change. So just work towards that. Because if you work with the plot points, getting to the denouement, well, it's called the climax, but in other words, the denouement, eventually you'll get there because you know your character, you know the obstacles, and you know how he wants to change. So just don't think so big picture. If you think by these little points, it really, really will clarify things.
Cool. Yeah, great tip. Cool. Is there times when you set stuff down and like we won't keep you too long, but is there times when you set stuff down and you're like 3 weeks, a month later, do you feel like it's better to set it down for 3 weeks and then go back
Absolutely.
to it? Okay.
Absolutely. It's like
fresh
with
eyes.
anything, yeah, exactly. Fresh eyes. And furthermore, you've taken space from it. So you're not really, in some ways, it shifts, the lens of viewing it. You're not just the writer anymore. You're the viewer, you're the reader. And one thing that's really helpful, this is something I do, you could do like a mock critics page. So pretend you're the critic, and humans are very judgmental anyhow. You go through your work and you do, let's say, like a page of criticism. Just go through and say everything that's wrong, everything that's not working. And that way you're not taking it personally. I mean, it's your work anyway, but I feel like we could be really hard on ourselves. And if you do this critics page, you're not the writer anymore. You're just looking for what doesn't work, what could be changed, and really what a critic would see. And it's really, really good exercise for like that post-writing time period.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I like that.
The editing hat is separate from the creative
Mhm.
hat.
Yes.
As a stand-up, that was my hardest hurdle to overcome. And when I did, it's like I shot up light years, was being able to stand away and not be emotionally attached to my material and just look
Mhm.
at it and say, yo, what's this
Objectively.
need? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to
Mhm.
accept the fact that it's like, hey, my joke, I'm not some perfect, everything I say is absolutely hilarious. It's a process.
Absolutely. And just like one last thing, this is like obviously a creative thing that we do, but it's called the entertainment business, not the entertainment art. So you really do have to sort of look, is it working? Is it shoppable? Am I going to get someone to stick with my script or my jokes past the first 2 pages? I always think of Zendaya when she talks about that Euphoria script. She's like, for the first time ever, and she said she's a distractible person. She goes, for the first time ever, I was able to get to that 20th page, which is a huge deal. You want to be able to keep them flipping that page. And with doing that, you have to have that objective eye when you go back and look at it, because you want new information on each page. And if you're being objective about it, you're going to be looking for that, because otherwise, what are you reading static noise for?
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
One
Damn.
thing I learned from my TV development internship at a production company was in terms of development, in terms of green lighting, producers want to know, why now? Why your script? Why should we make it now? I think that was interesting. And then why is it different? What sets it apart from the others?
Yeah.
So, and universal themes and all of that.
One thing I will say is, it sucks to hear, but truly accepting it will make you a better writer and moving forward. But there are like 5 different types of stories, maybe 6 or 7. And I talked to a producer recently who works out in LA, Kevin Parker, and he what I talked to him about was, I'm like, there's no demographic for the young adult between 21 to like, let's say like 29, right? I don't see that on television a lot. And it's really comes down to marketing to the demographic. And when, you know, I've been talking to him about developing things, and one of the things we discussed is making this demographic something that, let's see, I don't know, something that feels pressured to be represented, right? And they don't, the producers don't feel that pressure the way that they feel pressure with, you know, a lot of the high school tropes, right? So the pressure
Oh my
for
gosh.
representation is a big deal, because what he told me is, you know, they don't think young adults are watching television. So why are they gonna, you know, feed them? Why are they gonna feed people not in this demographic these stories? But it's coming up to the point where it is, you know, now. The line now is coming up. So always, like I said, it's a business, which sucks because like I'm so not business minded, but marketing is a huge thing in production, of course.
Right. I know. I went through a bad breakup in the summertime, and I just was looking. I was looking to movies to like relate for a coming of age. I wanted you know, like a late 20s, 30s coming of age movie. I couldn't find it. I already watched all Greta Gerwig, Frances Ha, Lola versus like Greta Gerwig is like my jam. And then the rest was all teen stuff. And I'm like, I don't want a teen coming of age. I've been there, done that. So that's such a great point. It's about time for like more stories. We need more stories, different.
Exactly. You know, when I didn't notice that until you mentioned that. And as soon as you mentioned it, I thought, and I said, you know something? I can't think of one. Maybe like a Dane Cook flick in like 99. There's something that wasn't, and it didn't even really like make it. Like, you're right. It's that demographic. That is wild. You added so much value to our podcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And how can people find you on social media?
So I have a Twitter, but the name's a little obscene.
Okay, hit us with it.
So it's my name. It's ALANUSHOLE. But I don't have an Instagram, but that's my Twitter. ALANUSHOLE.
So you're also a comedian.
I
like how you just got it.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm like in deep thought, like, okay. Okay. Follow Alanis on Twitter, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. This has been great. I love to spread the knowledge. I hope you guys find this useful too.
It's been a delight. Cheers when things open up a little bit more and, you know, get back in the city. Hope to see you around.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, 100%. All right, y'all. Thanks for checking us out. Thank you for joining our show, Alanis. Adios, Gape World. Good afternoon, Planet Earth.
Good afternoon, Planet Earth.
Thank you for listening to the Good Afternoon Planet Earth podcast. The only afternoon show that's filmed in the morning and aired at night. Please subscribe and leave a great review if you can. We will be grateful for that. Have a good afternoon, Planet Earth. for listening to the Good Afternoon Planet Earth podcast, the only afternoon show that's filmed in the morning and aired at night. Please subscribe and leave a great review if you can. We will be grateful for that. Have a good afternoon, Planet Earth.